My name is Akashi Chris, and I'm coming to you from Oklahoma, live from Oklahoma. And I'm just so excited to be here. Do you like the intro? So I got a new intro, and my intro has music by the lovely, amazingly talented David Hurley, who is the better half, other half. I'll just call him equal because I got to keep it even. Of our co-host tonight, Lynn Hurley. So, disclaimer: I had a really long day, so I'm like really tired, but I'm so excited to be here. So there's like a high pressure um, system coming from the north of potential goofiness that could like result in 95% of me being a goofy bastard. So welcome. And I'm so excited because I am in a really good mood. And without further ado, I'm going to start bringing some folks because I see people in the chat. Let me just say hi real quick to a couple people. I see Juan and Tim and Rock Esty, Diane, Amy, Irma's, Vaughn. I'm so excited that you guys are here. I'm going to pop your messages up. And if you have any questions during the show, please put them in all caps so I can see them. And I'm just so excited. Dorothy Hawkins is here in Dead Space, Maine. We got all kinds of great friends. So talk about friends. I've got friends. I've got friends in backstages. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them in. First of all, I have my guest co-host, my lovely sister, my friend forever from Rebellious Unknown, Lynn Hurley.
Hey, how are
Hi,
you?
Hurley.
I'm
Are
so
you excited
excited.
to be here
Bobby came
tonight?
to join us too.
Oh, Bobby, I'm hoping Bastet makes an entrance because guess what today is? It's like National Cat Day.
Is
I
it?
missed it for day in history. Yes, celebrate your cats, folks. Now I'm a cat person. It happened. And I love her. So hopefully she'll show up at some point.
She's
So,
so cute.
anyway, so yeah, Bobby's there. Bobby's going to be
Yes,
photobombing us all
he's
night.
representing.
So
He's
he's
representing.
representing. So we got some fun stuff planned for our special guest tonight. Our special guest, the incomparable Paul Hynek. He is the son of J. Allen Hynek, ufology, just God. He's in finance. He's a professor. He's into tech. He's like seriously cool human being and an answer seeker. And I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, Mr. Paul Hynek.
Hey, hi.
Whoop, whoop. Oh, then I got a special little jingle for Paul. Uh, I'm not gonna make you do the pose during the show, but I just wanted to throw something out there because it would be sad not to. So, how are you doing? What's going on?
I'm Jim Dandy.
You're okay tonight?
Yeah,
You're feeling good? You got the energy going on? Because
life is
Lynn
good.
and I are ready. Lynn and I are ready to go.
Let's
So
do it.
I'm going to introduce. So tonight we have the Wheel of Topics. And the Wheel of Topics always bring a good time. So, oh my God, Cassie, hey guys, Alfie Joe, Juan Falcon, Kekwi. I will be popping your names up here in a second. Let me go ahead and get things rolling. So, presenting the topics for tonight that will be on the wheel. I have graphics to go with this because it's all about production value. I don't know what I'm talking about. At this point, I'm just tired, so just go with it. Category number 1, artificial intelligence. And yes, that is Paul that will be displaying all the different, these are different versions of Paul because this is the wheel of Paul's. So we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Next, life extension. There is Paul looking for the fountain of youth, just looking for it. And we're going to be talking about that. So that is on the wheel. Third category, the consciousness connection. Yes, that is Paul as the love guru, because we're going to be talking about the consciousness, connection to UAPs, all kinds of cool stuff, because these are all Paul's jams. And next category, psychedelics. DMT. I've been stuck with that song all day. Dirty deeds. DMT. Yes, we are going to talk about that tonight. That is on the list. Remember, goofy alert. I warned you. And then the final category, which is one of our favorites if it pops up. How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
So, this is the category where Lynn and I sit back and go, hey, Paul, how you doing? And let you just say whatever you want. So those are the topics on the wheel. Are you okay with these topics? Are there anyone you want to nix because they're just too controversial? I know that you're just so shy and introverted.
I eat controversy for breakfast, so that's all good.
Woohoo! Controversy goes with my colon blow. We'll show you that later. So let's go ahead and see what topic is going to come first.
I'm so nervous.
I know. I'm so excited.
Can't wait.
Here we go. Spinning the wheel. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. One of my favorite topics. Artificial intelligence. Okay, let me pop this out. Okay, so just to let me make sure that we got Paul on the big screen here, over here. Okay, Paul. So I love artificial intelligence. I've actually done videos about it. But my perspective has been a little bit different than yours, and I'm really, really excited about hearing yours because I'm more from a social. It's like what we're feeding into AI and what it could turn into. But you have a different perspective on that. Can you kind of tell us about what you're doing with AI, because that's kind of near and dear to your heart?
Yeah, so I'll tell you both. I think an optimistic, inevitable, and scariest. A thing more scary about AI than you've ever even dreamed. In that order. So in that order. My optimistic approach is kind of like Ray Kurzweil. I am less concerned about the future of artificial intelligence than I am about the present of human stupidity. I don't know if we'll even make it to the AI takes us over. We're not doing a very good job managing this planet. So I'm far more concerned about tipping points in climate change than I am about driverless cars. So that's my optimistic take. And I think that, people are wondering, will AI, which is essentially machine capabilities, either through inherent, internal, emergent properties, sort of develop consciousness, or can we somehow graft consciousness into it by dint of some kind of super algorithm? I don't think that's how it will happen. So, you've got consciousness on one side and machine capabilities. For machine capabilities to sometime have consciousness, that's very, very, very difficult. Possible, but difficult. But what I think is inevitable is that we who already have the consciousness will gradually have more and more machine capabilities. We've had artificial hips, pacemakers. Now we have Neuralink coming online, so your brain will be grafted onto the internet of the future. And I think gradually humans will have more and more machine capabilities until it at least asymptotically approaches what we think of as a singularity, where you have the marriage of machine capabilities and consciousness. So I think it's inevitable, but I think it's coming this way as opposed to going the way that most people talk about.
You think, yeah, because my concerns, and then just pipe in, my concerns on this are just like AI. When I think about AI agents and stuff, those type of technology. I mean, because you can make this very bad. You can make this very good. And that's what I like about your perspective, which is how to improve, humanity and really, really achieve that, that unity with it the proper way. But I feel like we're stumbling already, Paul. I mean, as far as what we're feeding to these engines and what it's learning from our failed human condition.
Well, it's just a more powerful tool than we've had before. And tools always have sort of bright and dark side. When the Wright brothers basically pioneered aviation, they were convinced it would end warfare for all time because you could see, the enemy's army. They didn't realize that you could drop shit on the enemy. So
Yeah.
it will go both ways. And AI is the same thing. It's a very powerful tool, and it can be used. It's agnostic in how it's used. And in my version of the sort of transhumanist approach, it's not so much the AI making decisions against humans. It's humans with superhuman AI capabilities making the same kind of decisions that they do now, good and bad. So there's a lot of risk and a lot of reward.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn, do you want to? You're not.
Yeah. Sorry, I was like muted because it's like a farm in here today.
It's the chickens, we got dogs, we got cats, we got it all.
2 dogs. There's a lot. But yeah, so I love AI. I find AI super fascinating. And the reason that I do, so my background, for those that don't know, my background is in psychology. And so I look at the question of consciousness, and I know we're, possibly going to talk about consciousness a little bit later too. So I'll kind of save some of that. But AI for me really brings up the question, what exactly is consciousness, right? Is it just to be consciously aware of one's own place in the universe, in life, to be aware of one's own existence, or is it something more than that? And I think that AI really brings up an interesting question when it comes to that. And I'm not overly concerned about AI becoming conscious per se. And I know that's maybe a controversial perspective, because I also look at the complexity of emotions, and you can program a computer to recognize what an emotion sounds like, looks like, the facial features, right? But can we truly program a computer to understand an emotion? That's a completely different thing. And I think that we are very, very far away from that, if ever. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like it reminds me of an experiment that was done at a prison where they brought in people to teach sociopaths how to read micro facial expressions. Because one of the hallmarks of being a sociopath is that you just can't empathize. You can't understand the emotions someone else is going through. So they gave them, let's say, a cheat code to understand the emotions of other people. And they were hoping then that would sort of open the floodgates to a common humanity in them and wipe away that nasty sociopathology. On the actual opposite happened. The sociopaths wound up saying to the effect, "Thank you, because now we know how to inflict greater suffering because we know what emotions they're going through." So like you said, Lynn, teaching something that doesn't have emotions, I think you can teach them how to better recognize the signs and understand what it is. But for them to, any type of AI consciousness that's not developed inside a human, to understand and have emotions, that's probably at least a V2 of the affair.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lynn. No, go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to say that's a really good point that you were making too, Paul. Like, teaching them emotions also teaches them to learn how to manipulate humans via their emotions. So it is a slippery slope, right? So I don't know that we necessarily need to teach them emotions. I think that there are always going to be people that want to do it just to see if they can do it, or just to see if it can be done. Now the question is it a good idea to do it? That I don't know about.
Yeah, and insofar as this kind of singularity of self-aware consciousness and machine capabilities comes from humans, think of like Iron Man, right? Where you've got super capabilities. Obviously, in that case, we don't have to teach emotions. They come with their own emotions, with their own baggage, whether it's damaged or altruistic.
Yeah, where I was going with this, I lost my train of thought because I was looking at chat. But here's my problem with it. And it's not my problem with it, is, where if we teach AI engines sentiment analysis to a certain level and keep developing through AI capabilities of expanding, like building upon what it has learned from our social behavior. I mean, those are marketing tools we use today. we look at the response of a product, based on the sentiment of text that they might have, written. A review might look positive, but when the sentiment goes in, it looks, negative. I don't know if eventually with the brains that this thing is going to have, whether it's going to, it's just going to outpace us in that area. So that's my only concern. But
yeah, and sentiment analysis, let's say, I like that phrase, can be used obviously to manipulate people. But what if we have AI robot companions for elderly? In that sense, you can see that sentiment analysis could be invaluable as a companion, right? So all this stuff, there's good and bad, and I think we're going to see both. If you had asked our great grandparents, if you had sat them down at a table and said, hey, your great grandkids will live in a world with largely painless dentistry. They can fly across the world in lighter than air ships. All these other wondrous things. They can communicate for free on these wondrous things. They would have said, that's great. Oh, but hold on. The Faustian bargain part here is that at the same time, there will be bombs of a size and scope you cannot comprehend, pointed at their heads, ready to go off at any time. Would you accept that?
Yeah, who's going to sign up for that? It's like,
and our future is even more. I think bigger bombs, figuratively pointed at our heads, and even cooler things in the interim.
That's kind of a mind-blowing moment right there, because I don't know what There's the curiosity, it's like, what if you do this? But then it's like, are you going against the laws of nature? I don't know, and the universal laws.
Yeah, that's like human beings' greatest strength, but it's also our greatest weakness is curiosity. It's what drives us to discover new things, create new things, but it's also what will most likely get us into the most trouble as well.
So overall positive, then, net positive outlook, as long as we don't kill ourselves in the process.
Yeah, it feels like the temperature in the room is that Lynn and I are pretty much on the same page, optimistic, and I see you, Chris, is neutral, slightly negative, maybe. So it's a good balance.
Not negative. Just a little concerned, because we are human and we're teaching AI. That's my only concern. It's learning from our behavior. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I think everybody has concerns. Now I'm going to go super dark. Are you ready?
Ooh, crap. Here we go. Get ready, chatters. It's going to get dark.
Okay. Have you heard of Roku's basilisk?
No.
You are not going to thank me afterwards. Roku's basilisk is the idea that in the future, an omnipotent AI will be so vengeful that it will not only seek retribution against the humans of its era, much like the Matrix or the Terminator, it will go back in time, not only to kill John or Sarah Connor, but to kill all humans, not just the ones who opposed AI, but even those who weren't sufficiently supportive of AI.
Oh, I'm screwed.
Say nice things, Chris.
Yeah.
I have a
remember, at that point, it will have sentiment analysis, so it can read through bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, and it will probably read through the nonverbals, through your visuals, the use of your hands, the way you enunciate, what words you choose. I mean, it's the brain that we're not capable of comprehending.
So clearly a consensus here amongst the three of us and the folks chatting is that we all love AI, and we can't wait for it to come and help shepherd us into a glorious new era.
We love you, AI. You did the Olin Mills, this is sideways. No, I am really nice to my fridge. Its name is Bixby. It's like when it's a Samsung. So I try not to complain to my fridge, because I feel like it would probably take revenge.
I'm sorry. I have to say this, because I think AI in general. Okay, Bixby is like the retarded stepchild of the AI world.
and can never figure it out. I'm like, what's in my fridge, Bixby? It's like, I don't understand you. It's like basically you suck. I'm like, Bixby, can you please? Because I'm like trying not to say, damn it, Bixby. And I'll be like, you are now targeted for termination. So I get you. I'm afraid of my fridge, Paul. I'm afraid of my fridge.
Wow.
Okay, so we're at 20 minutes. Should we move on to our next category? Is there anything dark, anything else you want to scare me with, Paul?
I can't go below Roku's Basilisk. That's all. That's the deepest thing I got.
That's I'm getting screwed. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the wheel back up for our next category. Everybody, are you ready? We got some more chatters. Renee Cruz is here. Rock ST, Woosha, Hectic, Stargazer, Cindy. You guys, this is going to be so much fun. Let's see what the next category is going to be. The consciousness connection. And that one, let me remove that one from the wheel. Perfect transition. That could not have worked any better. So it's that one
like
goes
the computer knew what it was doing.
I did not tell it to go in that order. This is a complete freak coincidence. Okay, so Lynn, take the next one. Consciousness connection.
Consciousness connection. Yay, I'm excited about this. Okay, so we talked a little bit about consciousness already, right? We don't exactly understand it. Now, I'm going to bring in your dad a little on this because from what, like when you and I have talked a little bit and like things that I've read and heard, your dad really started to kind of delve into consciousness quite a bit when he was studying UFOs, or I think it kind of evolved into that. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you yourself, and I know we have psychedelics as another category, so I don't want to completely get into that, but I know that's another area that you yourself are looking into too. And consciousness is absolutely fascinating. So what do you think the role consciousness plays in society today? Where is our current level of understanding? Let's start there. You know, with an easy one.
I would say it's at a very incomplete reductionist level. It's almost like how the Supreme Court defined pornography. I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you when I see it. We can recognize consciousness, which is sort of the ability of an organism to adapt in response to environmental stimuli. And that's sort of like the base level definition of consciousness, a coherent entity that has awareness of its environment. Then you go metaphysical, and there are all kinds of experiments that demonstrate that consciousness is indivisible, malleable, instantaneous, everywhere. Frank Brown at Northwestern a long time ago did an experiment where he had 2 fertile eggs. And he put one of the fertile eggs in boiling water while he had an EKG hooked up to the other egg in the room. When this egg went into the boiling water, the egg with the EKG registered a reading, which I think is just fascinating. And there's all sorts of other experiments, or the famous photon experiments with the beam splitter, where it seems to know and to peek into the consciousness of the observer as to the expectations of which way that single photon of light will go. Or you have Rupert Sheldrake and his morphogenetic fields, who posits that there is, like a baby tortoise is born on the sand. How does it know immediately to go into the water? So he thinks that's a field, an energy intelligence field that animal, that individual unit taps into. So there are so many examples of consciousness going down to the very smallest level and not being isolated in individual entities. So I think modern science is just starting to understand how very basic and irreducible consciousness is.
So do you think consciousness is so I'm a big fan of the idea of the collective conscious, but I also think it's kind of like the particle and the wave at the same time kind of a scenario, right? So we have the collective consciousness, but I think we also have our individual consciousness, both equal, and two distinct things can be equal at the same time. So I think they both exist, but it just depends upon the perspective of the being paying attention to it at that point in time. So is it that the particle beam is aware of the onlooker or whatever it was, or is it that we, the onlooker, are aware of the beam and assigning that consciousness to it?
Yeah, and then there's also been experiments done that say you're going to hit a blue button or a red button, and they have an EKG and I think some other even more fancy devices to pick up your brain waves. They can detect the chemical signals that determine the red or blue button before your waking conscious decision is made. So that suggests that it's chemical based and that you're brought into the process just in time before it happens to make you feel that you have the agency to make that decision, but you're actually the first seat of the bus.
So now, is that consciousness though, or is that simply that the brain? So the brain is electrical, right? The brain is a machine to a certain extent, we could call it that. And so it's going to have chemical processes for each thought and for each segment of thought, because thought is almost instantaneous, right? It moves faster than the speed of light. And so is it just that our awareness of the thought is later than the beginning of the process of the thought?
Yeah, which one comes first, right?
Right.
You know, like this morning, I had this real strong urge to deposit $100,000 into your bank account, Lynn. And all I could think about was a certain person's CIA mind control background. I'm not going to name any names, but her name rhymes with Win.
I don't know what you're talking about. I said I had a psych background.
Yeah, but I know we'll let that go. Okay, nothing there.
Okay, I have a question. I'm going to add one from, hold on, that's not it. Here we go. Juan Falcon. I've actually known Juan since he was little because we went to high school together. His questions: are consciousness and free will connected?
No idea. I mean, that experiment that I mentioned seems to indicate perhaps no. And I think Sam Harris has written some really interesting things about this. He's got sort of like a pamphlet called Free Will. And he believes there is no such thing as free will. He cites that experiment or those experiments about the chemical determinants or the chemical signals for decisions, and talks about other things like the increasing awareness we have of the role that the gut flora, the microbiome, has on us. And there have been some really interesting papers on that. So he thinks there is no free will, and that by extension, imprisoning people for doing bad things is inherently wrong because it's their chemistry and microbiome that drive them to do that. I'm not as far as Sam Harris. I think maybe our cherished notion of, in the West, of the glory of individualism may not be quite as fully furnished as we think, but I think it's pretty much intact. And I think even if there's chemicals going into our decisions, I think there's probably a pool of things from which we draw, and we likely still do have some agency. So I think consciousness and free will are connected, but I think free will is probably not as fulsome as we once thought.
So is free will like civil liberties? There's the illusion that we have them, but we may not necessarily have as many or as much as we thought.
Well, I mean, this morning I didn't have free will when I was going to the bank. I'll tell you that. So
you had free will when you deposited it into my account.
Well, I had, yeah.
When he decided not to. When he changed his mind, that was free will.
The microbiome overruled me. right?
Yeah, dang, it was the microbiome, Lynn. He's so sorry. That's
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a crazy one at you, only because I've always been curious on some of the wilder theories of, is our consciousness purposely locked by something, some, potentially like a black, that whole black pyramid thing, or is it locked for our own protection based on law of survival? Or is it, what do you think is keeping us, just seeing only, I mean, I think there's stuff all around us that we don't see. That's just kind of where I'm at. I'm assuming it's there. What are your thoughts?
I'll let Lynn take that one.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to switch screens. Lynn's in the hot seat. Lynn?
Okay, repeat
No,
the question.
If the question, remember, Goofy Bastards over here, hosting the show. My question was more like, is there something, do you believe that there's something really physically locking our consciousness? Or do you think it's just, law of survival? Because to me, it feels like consciousness is so much more powerful. Everything tells us that it is, even the stuff that you were just talking about. So what, is there really truly that power? What are your thoughts on how far?
No, I don't think that there's anything naturally locking our consciousness. Now, and I don't know that we can necessarily manipulate our consciousness. Now, our consciousness is different than our brain. The mind and the brain are two different and distinct things. So if we want to think of consciousness as kind of being like similar to the mind. Yeah. Software, and the brain is the hardware, right?
The brain is the hardware.
Yes. So we can mess with the hardware, which will impact the software, but I don't think we can directly impede the software itself. Does that make sense?
No, makes sense.
Thanks for the computational metaphor, Paul Hynek.
Here to serve.
Let's go back to Paul. Okay, so anything else on consciousness? Anybody? Hold on. There is a question from Dorothy Hawkins. Paul Hynek, what do you make of the connections between consciousness studies and religious traditions and meditations, ancestor worship, and earth religions?
Ooh, doggies. I don't know that I'm especially qualified to give anything useful about that. I mean, I'm fascinated by meditations. I'll tell you an anecdote. I was doing a family Zoom call, and we were looking in Google Maps at a house outside of Boston where my family used to live before I was born. And my older brother, Scott, who's quite the character, just sort of randomly blurted out, "Oh, that window on the top floor, that was the Maharishi's room." And I said, "Oh, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi stayed in our house for a month right before he met the Beatles." I said, "What? How come I didn't know that?" He goes, "I don't know. You never asked." I said, "I need to ask. Hey, did the Maharishi come to our house?" And so my brother Scott and my sister each got their own mantra, and he was apparently hanging around in our house for a month.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I can't believe that nobody told you. It's like that would have been important information a long time ago.
So now I'm on a kick. Like, who else was in our house? What other kind of specific questions do I need to ask?
Yeah, it's like you need to be really specific. Are there entities? Are there, any, probably even more specific.
Right. So like, is that iconic picture of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Beatles, was that in our living room? I mean, do I need to get that granular?
I think you do.
Where did he sit? Where did he sit? Did he go to the restroom? Because you need to make sure you take pictures. Anyway,
and what kind of pizza do you get him? And the answer, of course, is one with everything.
There we go. One with everything. Bam!
Nice.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Okay, that is the perfect segue, I think, to our next category. Shall we go for it?
Sorry, Dorothy, you really punted on that one.
Dorothy will throw. Dorothy's like that too. So we love Dorothy.
I think Dorothy may have some interesting things to say about that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't wait. Dorothy's been on the show. She's really cool. So we'll have her back. Maybe we can do a little mix up there. Okay, we're going to do the wheel again. Let's see what comes out next. Psychedelics. Let me make sure I remove that. Psychedelics. So, Paul Hynek in the hot seat. Let's talk psychedelics. So, I mean, I don't have to limit it to DMT, but DMT seems to be, something you're got some experience with. So, so on the psychedelic side, specifically DMT, do you think it really opens your mind? Like, do you see something that's not there, or do you think you're seeing things? Tell me about experiences and what your opinions are on that.
Okay, so to sort of frame this, let me show you what I looked like when I started doing psychedelics.
Oh my gosh, look at you.
Right.
Wow.
Many, many years ago.
Many years ago. I love the long hair. That's cool.
So I may or may not have done a lot of drugs, especially in my younger days. I don't, with the exception of one, I don't do them anymore because I prefer clarity over distortion. Psychedelics to me stand apart because I feel the psychedelics I've done have imparted new frameworks, new orientations on me that are valuable. So I stopped doing all drugs a long time ago. And then about 5 years ago, I was with a friend of mine in a restaurant here in Calabasas, California, where I live. And this guy crash landed tardigrades on the moon, which is a pretty cool calling card.
I love tardigrades.
Coolest animal in the world. Second coolest animal, peacock mantis shrimp. If anybody wants to see that, go on my YouTube channel. I got a video that I made about peacock mantis shrimps.
Okay, we need to put that up. I got to see that.
It's amazing. So he knew about my dad. He said, "Hey, Paul, where did your dad think UFOs came from?" I said, "Well, he's a scientist. He was very comfortable saying there's a phenomena, less so in positing where they came from. But he thought that the extraterrestrial hypothesis was kind of lacking. And so he leaned towards, as you mentioned, consciousness and maybe interdimensional." And my friend Nova said, "Whoa, you need to read a book called Alien Information Theory." Alien Information Theory. Sexiest book title ever, perhaps after Bitcoin Standard, Lynn. So, woo, that's right. Woo. So Alien Information Theory, I said, "Okay, what's it about?" And he goes, "DMT." I said, "Yeah, what's that? Don't know." He said, "Well, it's the most powerful psychedelic in the world. One variant, which is fairly well known as ayahuasca." And I said, my first thought was, how could I have never heard of this before? DMT needs a better marketing agency, I guess. And he told me, "Yeah, read the book." So I'm primed to read the book. 2 hours later in the same restaurant, I met a guy who I hadn't met before, who'd been introduced to me because a mutual friend said I could help him get his movie made. I promptly talked him out of making the movie, but he's given me his background, and he says, "Yeah, I do various things, and I do DMT facilitations." I said, "What? Can I hijack the conversation and talk about DMT?" He goes, "Well, apparently the universe has already guided it that way." And he said, "I have some. You want to do some right now?" "Oh, I can't do it now. I'm going on vacation tomorrow." But 2 weeks later, I did. And I started my, call it DMT journey, because I read the book Alien Information Theory, and the basic idea in this book by Dr. Andrew Gallimore is that DMT is not merely a psychedelic drug that produces hallucinations. That it is actually a technology likely left by another civilization that enables us to make contact with what feels like the root level operating system of the universe. So I thought, well, look, my dad spent a good part of his life investigating UFOs and came to feel as interdimensional. And now here I'm being told about a substance you can take that might, according to this one theory, take you to another dimension in a lucid capacity such that you can communicate with interdimensional entities. Hey, that's worth it. So purely in the interest of science, started doing it and questioning the entities there as to who they were. And it has been a fascinating journey. And at Contact in the Desert in June, Andrew Gallimore was speaking, and we were going to be on a couple panels together. And I proposed to the organizers that, look, how about another presentation by Andrew Gallimore and I talk about UFOs, he talks about DMT, and they said, sure. So the night before the presentation, Andrew and I met with some friends and had dinner, and we became great friends. We had the presentation together. We did panels together. We did stuff together, had a great time. And I really got to understand his theory, how we came up with it, and why it's more than what seems like some kind of crackpot notion. So to me, this idea of DMT in particular as a portal or whatever, what have you, to this other universe might just be the end around to the ultimate solution of the UFO phenomena that goes right past disclosure, right past sightings, and gets right to the core of the phenomena. So that's why I'm doing it. And I just find it to be one of the most fascinating things in the world.
It's crazy to me that it comes up now in hearings about multidimensional and all these other concepts, and the fact that the government has been doing these experiments for a long time. This is like, a proven deal. But what is the craziest? So in your experience, because I've never done it, so I'm just like, is this something you feel totally out of control? I mean, what is the best experience, like the most like in depth, like something that just really changed you about this particular anecdote that you can share?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you are out of control. You are in no way in control of that. And my friend, the first person I did it with, he does a lovely invocation to the plant medicine. He sets the tone, plays a song called Devi Prayer, which is just perfect. And then after all this, he says, okay, now forget everything else and just remember, breathe and surrender. To your point about control, Kasha Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered skydiving. And when I went skydiving, they told you scream, because it's so scary that you don't breathe. And if you scream, you'll breathe. So I was already familiar with that. And I was on a mission to learn. So I didn't really worry about losing control. So the very first time I did it, big old bong hits and bam, transported to the DMT verse.
Mm-hmm.
I got my bearings, and I didn't see incorporated entities, but I felt a presence all around me, magnificent, and really felt like, and I felt like I saw the universe, the fabric of the universe itself being created in front of me. And I don't know whether I spoke out loud or in my mind, but I said, are you what we perceive to be aliens and UFOs?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt trillions of miles of synapses and neurons firing. And the answer came down to me, we can't explain in a way that you would understand. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound like no. And it wasn't condescending. And I thought, well, look, if UFOs are related to an experience you have on DMT and maybe ghosts and lucid dreams and what have you, I can see that connective tissue would be above my intellectual pay grade and that I wouldn't be able to understand it. And so that fascinated me. So I've done it more because I want to make that land bridge. And I'm actually developing a protocol to help people who experience things like DMT or aliens or ghosts to try to go there or have that experience and bring back demonstrably third-party objective evidence of the reality of that encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so actual factual things that you can bring back from that show that something happened, that proves something, to prove that it can, like, I think you talked about it and I saw you on Dole, that it was so awesome. So you guys were talking about, being able to prove a particular, like, solve a mathematical equation that no one can solve. Like, take it, on that ride and be able to control that and ask those questions. I mean, that's just fascinating if you can really master that.
Yeah, and it's not easy, right? Because people who claim to have these experiences, whether it's DMT or UFOs, often don't feel, to your point again, that they were in control. That they can go in there and say, okay, here's the agenda for our meeting, pal. It just doesn't often manifest like that. But there are millions of experiencers in different communities. And if I can help with this system I've developed, which I hope will ride on top of my father's close encounters classification system, if I can inculcate in the various experiencer communities, even the idea that, look, if you want to demonstrate the objective reality of this, many don't care, they don't feel that need. But if you do want to, what we've done as a group so far hasn't really moved the needle. We bring back things like, hey, Earthlings, be careful with the nuclear weapons, or something personal like Aunt Bertha has the gout. Okay, that can be valuable for that person, but it doesn't move the needle for science. So what I'd like to do is say, look, when you can, proactively approach these encounters and think about these types of things, with mathematical or biological or technological or factual, and try to bring back information that we can present to others. And the more of us that do that together, the more we'll make friends of mine like Michael Shermer, the founder of Skeptic Magazine, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Seth Shostak, etc., lean into the phenomena and say, okay, let's talk more. Let's do this under laboratory conditions. And if we get them interested and get them to say, yes, something's happening here. I can't say categorically it proves that aliens exist, but it proves something meta-terrestrial seems to be afoot. And when we do that, that's when I think we move forward as a society, because I don't give a rat's ass what the US government says or does, but I'm interested in this nexus between the scientific community and experiencers, because I think that's where we make real progress.
Do you see that science, the science will eventually embrace,
if we present and frame these experiences in scientific terms, using scientific vocabulary, like you mentioned mathematics. If I go into a trance state or DMT or alien encounter and I come back and I solve the Riemann hypothesis, which is a famous unsolved mathematical problem, well, I will get the attention of the whole world. Now, people won't say, oh, that's an alien. They'll say, no, Paul, or some intelligence that Paul talked to came up with an answer that nobody in history has been able to do. I need to learn more. I mean, that will intrigue them to make them sit at the table. And then if we have other cases with other type of evidence, that's how we get them to stay there.
Lynn, that's very fascinating. I'm like, always feel like I'm so locked up in this little reality. Lynn, what do you think about this? This is cool stuff.
Yeah, it is really cool stuff. So I was listening to your recent interview with Richard Dolan, which can be found on YouTube. And you're welcome, Paul.
What?
And now it totally just made I forgot what I was going to say. We were talking DMT. Oh. And I think you mentioned something about, isn't it something like there's something in DMT that the pituitary gland naturally secretes?
Yeah, it's the pineal gland. And I'm not sure it's accepted as scientific fact, but it's at least widely conjectured that the pineal gland secretes DMT. Now, what we do know is that it's essentially coursing through the natural kingdom. It's in trillions of plants around the world. And that's how we get it, and through these sort of native rites of manipulating the plants. That's how people started doing rituals like ayahuasca and other forms of DMT. And it's thought that DMT is secreted by the pineal gland during moments of trauma, perhaps childbirth or death and birth. And so I think it's, to me, that the notion that it's in the pineal gland already kind of rings true, because when I did it the first time, my friend, the shaman administrator, said, okay, Paul, you're going to try to do 3 bong hits. When you do the first bong hit, right away, you're going to feel like you're floating and you're going to see things. And I'm thinking, dude, I know bongs. It doesn't happen that fast. I got this. I do that first bong hit and I'm floating and seeing things immediately. There was no lag time. And I don't care what substance it is. I don't see how I can ingest smoke and without any lag time, whatever, feel a greater psychedelic sensation I've ever had in my life instantaneously. So it seems like it's already past the blood-brain barrier and just waiting to be invoked.
So that is really, yeah, it's fascinating. And what made me really like interested when you said that, and the pineal gland, yes, which is also commonly referred to as what, the third eye, right? That's kind of what we think of it, the third eye. And I was wondering, you know, have there ever been, and I'm assuming the answer is probably no to this question, but have there ever been any studies done or anything to see if people like, say, like mediums who can see ghosts, or people who are able to experience kind of like the other side of the veil more readily than the rest of us, do they secrete a greater amount of that substance through their pineal gland than the average person who doesn't see ghosts?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I never thought about that. Part of me feels maybe not, because what's commonly experienced in DMT and what I experienced is very different than like aliens or ghosts or loved ones, anything like that. But that doesn't mean that it might be more, if you're using what's already inside you in sort of like a more meta endogenous form, then maybe you are taken to a different path. And maybe it is like an all-purpose access, you know, all backstage pass access to different realms. And I chose this path. That could be.
Right. Or maybe you're taking a greater hit of it all at once, whereas they're getting a sustained release in their
energy. So maybe I go right past Ghost Town and just keep going.
Yeah, you're just like, you know what, I'm good. I'm good. You guys have fun.
Now, one thing he said made me think about something. There's something you said that made me think about something. Didn't you say that, you know, at death and birth, you're secreting DMT? How about NDEs? A lot of the people that have special abilities have suffered an NDE. Wouldn't that be kind of a similar, not as drastic, but a similar, you know, maybe enlightenment that happens at that point? I'm just kind of thinking out loud as you were talking about it.
Sure. I mean, that's you're essentially sometimes clinically dead already, right? So that's pretty traumatic. So and you know, it's almost like the idea is that amount of DMT is just there to help you not freak the hell out. Which is funny, because when you do a lot of it, that's exactly what you do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you ever just freaked out? Like, did you ever just like, oh my God, I saw something that I'm just gonna tell us? What did you see?
Well, one time I did it. I was at a friend's house doing it with a pipe, and I'm doing the pipe, and nothing happened. And I thought, okay, she's very nice, but this pipe is not strong. I'm just gonna have to be polite and say, oh, that was cool. But then she goes, oh, it's clogged. So then she unclogs it, and I did it like, bam, and I'm just gone. And Joe Rogan described it as complex geometric patterns made of love and understanding. And to me, that's a sublime description. And I saw these patterns just like coming towards me. This time I didn't have to be transported. It's like it made a house call, and I'm in the full DMT verse, and it's always the same intelligence. One time it said, welcome back, Paul. Let's resume where we left off last time. And you feel embraced by the same constant steady state intelligence that's so magnificent. And I'm just like going through the folds of the universe. And I remember thinking two things. One, I could have this exact same vantage point on the universe for all eternity and never get bored. This is infinitely stimulating. And the other thought was, I'll never go back to my day-to-day life. I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy. I just stayed because my mind is so changed. I can never go back to like being a CFO. But then 15 minutes later, I'm on my phone checking Waze for the traffic on the 405.
But that's law of survival, right? You can't let these moments just kind of take you out of your current, reality that.
And I think that's part of what it makes DMT so special. There are different forms, but I think the most common one lasts about 15 minutes. You come out of it and you sort of reassemble the shards of your ego, and then you're fine. There's no after effects. You're fully functional. You retain memory of what you experienced, both intellectually and emotionally, but then you're able to go about with your life. It just seems like it can't happen, and yet it does.
Okay, you made me think of something when you were talking. You said each time you went, it was the same voice. So, okay, my supposition is based on the fact that I believe in, I guess you can call it reincarnation, but in multiple places. What if each time you're connecting with another version of yourself, and that's why it's the same voice?
It could be. I'll say this, that it seemed like a whole lot cooler entity than me, by a long shot. But so maybe that's me in the future after I've gotten all the bugs out. I don't know.
Well, it could be you that has gone through more cycles, that has ascended
a lot more cycles.
A lot more cycles.
Or like, like the
thank you, Lynn. Very kind of you.
Like your higher self. Maybe you're connecting to your higher self.
That's I'm glad you brought that up.
I hadn't thought about that, Lynn, but I'm going to keep that in mind next time I go there, because that would just trip me the F out if that's the case.
And I want to know, just be like, is Lynn right? Are you my higher self? And then just call me right after.
What if it's your higher self directing me to go back to the bank?
Maybe or what if it's like, no, this is Lynn's higher self.
or Lynn's lower self, right? Say no. Bank, no.
More accurate.
It's like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's Lynn from Toe World, where everybody had toes that have feet for fingers and hands, and then there's Evolved Lynn, which is like just a spirit.
We're still waiting on her.
Which is what we have now.
No.
Exactly. Look how
we have toe Lynn right now. Let's be honest.
So I'm going to go ahead because it is 9:00. I want to move on. We have 2 more topics that I want to cover. So let's go ahead. Are we ready to spin it again? Spin it again. Let me go here and then spin the wheel. Oh, yeah. That moment has come where we ask, Paul, talk to us, Paul.
How you doing?
How you doing? There's disclosure. How you doing? There's disclosure. There's UAPs. There's hearings. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I'm not a disclosure bunny. So, like I said, I don't give a rat's ass what the U.S. government says or does. They led my dad around by the nose for 20 years. And this could all be one big kabuki theater. I mean, I don't know that they have saucers or alien bodies. Those secrets are very hard to keep. And if they have them, not only do I think they won't disclose them, but I don't think they should. It's not the business of the military to better humanity or lessen our dependence on fossil fuel. It's to kick ass. That's what they do. If we had reverse engineered a flying saucer from Roswell, they'd be speaking English in Beijing by now. We're not going to sit on that wondrous technology. we're going to militarize it. So I'm pretty sure we haven't successfully cracked the code of alien tech. And if we have, and to the extent that we have tech that we haven't figured out, it's hard to understand how we keep that so secretive so long. The recent hearings are interesting. It's turning the volume up that much more, but it was more incremental than disruptive, I felt.
That's a good take. I mean, I like the fact that Congress might have FOMO, that they are now finding out that they have things that they didn't know. And each one will be motivated by their different, their different motivators, right? And I'm hoping that lifts, that does something. But at the same time, I don't think that we're going to, if we put all our eggs in that basket, that Disclosure Act is 25 years, right? So it's like, yeah, wah, wah, wah. I got Debbie Downer. Wah, wah.
Yeah. I'm friends with Richard Dolan, who you mentioned, and Steve Bassett. They're the two best known people related to disclosure. And Steve is an eternal disclosure evergreen optimist.
I love Steve.
Yeah,
I want to give him a hug sometimes. It's like,
I do too. I talked to him earlier today, and he and I have very different takes, and we sort of tease each other about it. But yeah, I just like cryptocurrency, the U.S. government with UFOs is a bad faith, corrupt central actor who should not be driving the train and should not be overly influencing what individuals say and do. The whole ethos of cryptocurrency is decentralization. Oh yeah, Steve Bassett was at the hearing. Steve, I'm looking at the comment. Steve also went to the staffers of all the members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. So he's doing yeoman's work in Washington. But the government, I see them as a corrupt force, and disclosure, I don't believe in that. I believe in exposure of experiencers and scientists working together. And that's what's driving the train. If the government wants to hop on the caboose, come on along, but they're not driving the train, in my view.
And I love that you brought up exposure, because it's funny because I just got back from Roswell not long ago, and Bryce there, his thing is confirmation. So nobody wants to use disclosure anymore. His point is confirmation. Yours is exposure.
Right.
Okay, somehow I feel like alien craft is probably small papitas compared to what the real secret is, what the real thing behind this, which is where you're going. The consciousness part is probably the real secret, that they compared to actual craft, that might be, hey, yeah, sure, aliens exist. Well, this is so much bigger. I mean, are you kind of in that bandwagon?
Yeah, I want to do that DMT. I don't want to worry about some Majestic 12 memo, whether the paper is aged correctly or not. I want to take that DMT express train right to the source and figure out that way, because we just haven't made, in my view, sufficient progress towards understanding the core aspect of the UFO phenomena in the last 50 years. So I think it's time to just go a completely different route and see if we can't circle around it that way.
Yeah, the other problem with the government too is that the government is so corrupt at this point in time. We can't trust anything they say. So anytime anything comes out and people ask me, well, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, what is their intent? That's what I want to know. That's the big question. Yeah. Like, why are they saying what they're saying right now? Why are they putting on this dog and pony show right now? What's the purpose? Because there's always a purpose. They're never doing anything for the good of humanity. That's just, it's not what they do.
It's individuals who have the main priority for them often is preservation of their job. So that's a very different optic or a very different motivation than save humanity. That's a very short-term, prosaic focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Which I mean,
So
also, if you think about it too, if these technologies that, we all hope and dream that they maybe have, that could end poverty, that could end illness, that could all of these things will put a lot of people out of work. And a lot of
Mhm.
pockets that are currently lined will become unlined. So it's a very complex system at this point in time. And I don't think as much as it would be wonderful for them to say, "Hey, this is what we have," and "Hey, here's Fred the alien. He's happy to meet you, and he comes from Zeta Reticuli." Like they're not going to do
yeah.
that because they have no reason to do it. There's no point for them to do that at this point in time, and I don't think there ever will
Well,
be.
but actually, I know Fred, and Fred's from the Pleiades, and not from Zeta Reticuli. So let's just
We
get
get
that
it
straight.
wrong every
Yeah.
time.
And
We got it wrong.
Sorry,
have
Fred.
you guys heard about LK99?
Mm-mm.
No, it's
Okay.
not some UFO memo. You can Google it. It's fascinating. It's a team of Korean physicists have allegedly come up with the holy grail of physics, which is room temperature, ambient pressure, superconductivity. So just search LK-99 and
99.
you'll find it all over the place. And it's not yet been substantiated sufficiently, but it's sweeping the science world by storm, because if this is true, we're maybe, and that's a big if, right? Were this to pan out, we are 20 years, let's say, from broad scale, affordable commercialization of limitless free energy.
But would that be allowed?
Yeah. How are we going to unravel ourselves?
It would not. It would
all
not
the
be.
companies and the.
It would not be stoppable. It would not be stoppable.
So it's something that someone in their own home could create, is what you're saying?
Eventually, yeah, because it's actually, it's not any type of rare earth mineral. It's copper and lead and maybe some magnesium. So it's just like molecular level desktop printing, which is another thing that's on the horizon. When either of these things come to pass, we are in a post-scarcity economy.
Well, that would be nice. But I think at least to get as simplistic as like a potato clock, like in order for them to not monetize it.
We're back to that. I mean, I just can't imagine that we can really unravel ourselves from all the money and all the, all the companies that are invested in this. And then what about, foreign countries and, bringing things out of balance? Not that the power's in balance right now. It's a mess already. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic. It's probably because I'm tired, but I'm usually a lot more positive than this. I'm the positive, right? I'm usually positive, Lynn. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not skeptical.
Yeah, usually I'm the negative.
I didn't say that, but yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, we're different. So I mean, I'm just.
Well, I mean, I think the solution to that's what Bitcoin and crypto is all about: is decentralization and taking power away from governments and corporations and investing it back in the hands of individuals.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I know this was not on the wheel of Paul, Chris, but I've been dying to ask. Okay, I'm right there with you. Decentralization. Yes. Okay, but now the governments of the world want to create digital currency. How is that going to affect Bitcoin? How is it going to affect Bitcoin? What do you think is going to happen to the cryptocurrencies if they create digital money?
Yeah. So the governments are starting to create what are called CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So in the case of the US, it's basically a digital representation of the US dollar. It has no benefits. It has wide scale tracking mechanisms. So
it has that benefit for them.
Right. Any shards of privacy you're clinging to now are gone. And there's no benefits to us. It is an attempt to sort of take the air out of the room about discussions about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is, until LK99 proves to be real, the greatest innovation of our lifetimes. And it's something that it's too late for governments to stop. so they can flail around to make a digital dollar, which to us individuals is essentially worse than the current dollar, because we already have most of the transactions we do are already digital, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
making a fully digitized version of a corrupt fiat currency is not a step forward. It's something that the governments will do. They'll try to regulate access to Bitcoin through the on-ramp and the off-ramp, but they can't stop it. So Bitcoin and Bitcoin astronomy, these are topics that we can get into another time perhaps, but that's what represents the real hope for humanity before we become post-biological, is this shining hill, there's shining light on the Bitcoin hill.
Very interesting. Again, yeah, we definitely need to have you back just for Bitcoin, because that's an entire topic just on its own.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of comments. It's like, I cannot understand cryptocurrency. I know we need some education. We need somebody to school us. So follow.
Well, you know, when I remember I was at the UFO conference where I met Lynn the first time. I think it was San Francisco. And I remember talking about Bitcoin, and somebody came up to me and said, "Dude, man, we're here at a UFO conference talking about real stuff. Why you got to get all weird and talk about crypto and Bitcoin and shit?"
Mm-hmm. And they say that. I didn't say that. That wasn't me. I wasn't there. I wasn't in that.
That wasn't
That's
you.
the weird thing at the conference.
No, it wasn't you. It was somebody that said that.
Oh,
But I love that that's the weird thing at the conference.
the weird thing. Of all things that were weird, that was it. Not everything else. Yeah, because your audience. So okay, so final topic on the list, unless there's anything else that's going on that you want to share with us in the how you doing category. Think you're good?
Cat Day.
Hey, it is National Cat Day, people. So, okay, the last one on the wheel is, and I'm going to go ahead and spin it, but everybody knows what it is. It is one last dance. And we're done. Life extension. And I think we've covered a little bit of it on the AI as well, but I wanted to kind of understand just where I know that one of your, oh my God, look at the kitty. I thought Bubby was going to do that to you tonight, Lynn, not Paul's cat. This is so cute. We got to get the full cat. What is the cat's name?
JJ.
JJ the cat. Hi, JJ. Welcome to Mindforked, JJ. So yeah, let's talk about Lynn, life extension. That was yours. Go for it.
Life extensions. All right. Well, Paul, why don't you tell us about some of your research into life extension, and then I have questions as per usual.
Okay. Ever since I was a kid, I had this gnawing feeling that humanity would be presented with opportunities for meaningful life extension. And I remember there was an episode of Star Trek where they had these heads in jars. And I thought, well, that's not a great way to go. And so I was already sort of primed for this. And then I met Aubrey de Grey, and I worked with him quite a lot in the Methuselah Foundation, which became the SENS Foundation. And I was at a conference with Aubrey and another speaker who was announcing a trial he was conducting. There was the first trial ever approved by the FDA to not fight a specific disease, but to combat aging as a whole. Or in other words, combat aging as a disease in and of itself. And so the mechanism that he went on to explain was to regrow the thymus gland, which is behind your breastplate. The thymus is what creates T cells, which are thymus-enabled cells, which are basically your white blood cells of your immune system. And he laid out such a strong research base for this. And he said he's looking for volunteers. They have to be healthy, this age range, etc. After his presentation, I bum rushed to the stage and I said, "Wonderful presentation. You can do all the testing you want on me, but I guarantee you I will be in this trial." And luckily I was. And the trial is 1 year long, and it proved so successful, not only in showing thymal regeneration, but overall markers of age reversal as measured by the Horvath clock, which is a whole other story. So the results were so convincing, they were published in a medically peer-reviewed journal called Aging Cell Magazine. I was so enamored with this, and I had the best results in the trial. My brother Joel had the second best results. I became CFO of the company, and it's not a plug because we are selling the treatment, but we don't really have capacity to accept a lot of people. But if people are interested, it's www.interveneimmune.com, and it's just fascinating. And so I did another 16-month protocol, and more than double it. It showed I had 11 years of age reversal. And so then I was featured on, and our company were featured on an episode of The Unexplained with William Shatner for age reversal. So I think I'm the only person on that show for two different topics, age reversal and UFOs. So to me, I just think, and there are a lot of people have a lot of objections to this. Oh, there's religious views. There's not enough food, not enough jobs. Nothing is as big a problem as 100,000 people every day dying, many of whom who don't want to, many of whom in great pain and horrible circumstances and financially ruined, and we lose all this institutional memory. That's the problem, that people are dying who don't want to. If our great-grandfathers, if we go back to that idea of our great-great-great-great-grandparents, hadn't fought to extend life by combating disease, etc., I wouldn't be alive. I would have been aged out by now. So even if you individually don't think that we should live longer, that you want to live longer, I think we owe it to our great-great-grandchildren, just like our great-great-grandparents gave us the privilege of living longer if we want to. So I'm very passionate about life extension for everybody. And I believe we're on the cusp of the type of meaningful life extension that I kind of dreamed of wildly as a kid. It's a very, very exciting time.
That's amazing. You look fantastic, by the way. I'm just going to throw that in there because he does look really good. But go ahead. Because it's working for you, Paul. It's working. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would do it, but then I'd be like, regressed back to about 4 years old. So,
well, you go back about like 10 years, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You get it. You get where I'm going with that.
Make me explain.
So the first question that came to my mind when I heard you explaining this was, so you're basically targeting the immune system to a certain extent, correct? So you're looking at white blood cells, your T cells, all part of the immune system. What about people? So like myself, I have two different autoimmune conditions. And an autoimmune condition, for those that aren't aware, is basically an overactive immune system, right? So your body is like almost producing too much. Where is there that kind of fine line between regenerating the gland without going too far, where now you create autoimmune disorders?
Right. So that's one of the main considerations. You should not take, so it's human growth hormone is the main ingredient of this sort of cocktail. And I did a lot of research about it before deciding to join the trial. If you have a pre-cancerous condition, you do not want human growth hormone feeding that. Now, with autoimmune diseases, actually the thinking of our principal investigators, one of the smartest medical minds of the world, and we had our kickoff at the Stanford Neuroscience Institute, so it was really a respectable outfit. He feels that it would actually help autoimmune diseases because it wouldn't just be like this elephant gun that elevates everything, the good and the bad, but would help restore that proper balance. Now, to my knowledge, we have not yet had people with autoimmune diseases because it's a sort of different characteristic. And we've only had about 30 people do the protocol. So it's been a fairly narrow set of parameters to be able to sort of test in a homogeneous fashion. But yeah, I was surprised because I thought about that also. And I heard our principal investigator said he thinks pretty strongly that would actually help.
So that's kind of like the homeopathic principle. You introduce a small amount into the body maybe, and then...
I'm kind of punching above my weight with the particulars of how that would work, but yeah, sure.
But what,
Yeah.
what we're gonna do is, yeah, sure. I want to make
Sure.
sure we include that in the show description. So
Yeah,
I
I can
wrote
write that
that
out here
down
because
from earlier.
it's just
Yeah.
fascinating.
Mhm.
I don't. Will everybody see this? If I can
Can
type.
you share? Definitely.
Here, let's see. I
Yeah.
got it. I got
Let's
it.
chat
Put
with
it on
everyone in
the
the
chat.
studio. Oh, come
Oh,
on.
he put it on the private chat. There it is.
Oh, here we go.
There it is. Mhm. There we go.
Yeah. No, I
And
think
there
it's
you got it.
absolutely
You got it.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
now I
this is
see. Now I see chats. Okay, I didn't see those before.
Yeah, everybody's been chatting. We've had like more people than I've had. I'm like so excited that everybody showed up for this because
Okay.
it's having such a good time. Yeah, we got a lot of people in the chat and really, really excited to hear
Oh, cool.
everything you've been saying, and everybody's been really positive. I have a really great chat group. Love you all so much. Oh my God, Doc Danger, just mwah, so much. Thank you, Doc. Paul, we're at 9:22. We told you we were going to wrap it up at about an hour and a half. I want to get some final thoughts from you. Anything you want to share? Anything exciting that you're just really jazzed about that you want to throw out there besides everything you've shared already?
Well, yes. So I may host a documentary about DMT. And today, because I was in contact with one of my friends who's a producer at Ancient Aliens, I pitched him. I'll tell you the pitch I gave him for a segment. It was, if you've watched Ancient Aliens, their narrator is a guy named Robert Clotworthy, who's a friend of mine who's got this great quality voice.
I love his voice.
Right?
I love that guy's voice. It's amazing. Yes.
And their show is very interesting. But the premise is they don't say things like, this is the fact. They say, could ancient aliens have done this? They sort of ask that question. It's very effective, rhetorical technique.
Yeah.
So I pitched it to them like that. I said, could ancient aliens have embedded a technology all over the earth to allow us to communicate with them? And so I said, what do you think? He said, well, we've already got season 16 planned and you're in some of the episodes, but that's interesting. Let me talk to somebody else. And he got back to me and he said, oh, actually, we are interested. And so I said, spoiler alert, I've been using this technology. So I'm going to talk to them on Friday afternoon about doing a segment about DMT as the conduit to
I'm so
the
excited.
cosmos.
I can't wait.
That's cool.
You on Ancient Aliens is so cool. And you've been that. I mean, the other day I was watching, I can't remember, Accidental Truth, maybe. I can't remember which one.
Oh, yeah, Ron James.
I'll see you there. I'm like talking. I was telling Lynn, I was like, this is so crazy. I'm emailing Hynek and you answered me back. And then like 5 minutes after you answered me back, you're on the screen. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of surreal, but it's just awesome. So to know people like you and to be able to I met David Childress, Paul. David Childress and Nick Pope at Roswell. I got him to say, could it be extraterrestrial?
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He did hand me my fork. He goes, did you forget this? He gave me my silverware at the buffet line and he had the accent while he did it.
Right. They're nice guys.
So keep us posted. I'm going to post everything. Where to find you. I know you're on Twitter, but you're not super active.
I have an anemic social media footprint. Yeah, I'm on Twitter. That's about it. You just got to hunt me down like the scurvy dog I am.
We hunt him down. We're Lynn. Lynn and I hunt him down.
No, when Lynn wants me to materialize, I don't feel those gossamer thin psychic puppet strings that she employs to make me appear.
I know she's magic.
This is why Paul likes me. He has no
magic.
I like Lynn. Lynn is super cool.
Lynn is so cool. Oh my God. So before we start taking us out, so I do want to call out that at the top of the chat, you guys, one of our previous guests, John Yost, is ill and he's fighting for his life at the top. I don't do super chats. I don't have a buy me coffee. What I do ask that if you don't mind giving a GoFundMe, the link is at the top of the chat. Help our friend. He's at 70,000 out of 200,000 that he needs to get the treatment that he needs. And he's a previous guest. He's a part of the Mindforked family. So if anybody can help or share it, if you can't give, share it, because you never know who can. So just out there, just pass it along. Paul, Lynn, when are you on next? Tell us before I say goodnight. You're
Gosh, I don't know. Well, I have a premiere coming out on Thursday, so we'll be there Thursday at 5 p.m. on Rebellious Unknown for anybody who wants to join.
You guys, somebody drop the link. What is your story this week? I want to hear.
It's a really weird one. It's so this is on kind of our paranormal spirits playlist, right, where we tell weird stories. And this one is about it's kind of a phone stalker who was known as Restricted, and he was hacked a 16-year-old girl's. I say he. We don't know who it is. It's still unsolved to this day. Hacked a 16-year-old girl's phone and was like stalking the family through the phone. It was very weird. Very weird.
Oof.
I can't wait. So if you guys are not subscribed to the Rebellious Unknown, she's got some really cool stuff. Her stories, she has been doing some live. She's going to come back doing that soon at some point. But the videos themselves are freaking hilarious, and they always have the educational point, but it's with the high strangeness. So it's a nice little mix. So you guys go check her out. Paul, man, I can't wait to see you again so we can dance again. We had that whole moment. We were like,
I'm free that night.
Dancing at conference with Paul Hynek. Thank you all so much. I'm going to take you guys out for a minute and play the outro. If you can wait for a second and say goodnight, because I don't know where my dogs are. They're somewhere in the dark outside. So I'm going to make it quick, but I'm going to come back on stage. Lynn, I'm going to put you back. Thank you so much for being here, my sister, my friend, my special co-host. And Paul Hynek, a freaking honor having you on. And this is your second time. So the third time, I'm going to have jackets like SNL.
Oh, yeah.
Merch. 3-time Mindforked. 3
right. The hat trick.
Jacket. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to get you a jacket for 3 times. So if you can hang in there, go backstage for a second. I'm going to go say goodnight to the folks here. You guys, this was so fun. And I didn't get to say hello to a lot of people in the chat. I love you all. It's beyond me that you guys all hung out. It's so awesome, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Looks like everybody had a good time. So I'm going to play us off for the evening. Don't forget, please just give, if you can, or share the link for John Yost. He's a special friend that we all care about. And then I'm going to take you out with our outro. And peace, love. I will be back soon. I'm going to be making some announcements on future episodes. So, mwah! I love you all. Love you guys. And have a great evening. And here we go with the outro. Back to, and again, thanks to Dave Hurley for the music, for the intro and outro. Stay mindful. Love.